what struck me when I was going through some of the headlines from some of the nightly newscasts was when we watched yesterday, the morning session, he said that the president should be indicted, but you can't indict a sitting president. And then he had to correct himself later because it contradicted his statement that he released with the DOJ. And he corrected himself and he said something about, we couldn't come up with a determination, which means that he didn't they couldn't find a crime. But if you watched ABC, if you watched CBS, and if you watched NBC, ABC said that Trump could still face criminal charges after he leaves office. That's not necessarily true. If you watch CBS, it says that he was not cleared of any wrongdoing. So they have a message they're trying to get out that's not factually correct, Molly.
Right off the bat, Ainsley Earhardt isn't telling the truth. She claims that Mueller said that Trump should be indicted, but that you can't indict a sitting president. But that's not exactly true. The statement she's talking about came during an exchange between Mueller and Ted Lieu, in which, after outlining a slew of criminal activity by Trump, Lieu asked Mueller if the reason Trump wasn't indicted was because of the OLC opinion stating that a sitting president cannot be indicted.
So to recap what we've heard, we have heard today that the president ordered former White House counsel Don McGahn to fire you. The president ordered Don McGahn to then cover that up and create a false paper trail. And now we've heard the president ordered Corey Lewandowski to tell Jeff Sessions to limit your investigation so that you stop investigating the president. I believe a reasonable person looking at these facts could conclude that all three elements of the crime of obstruction of justice have been met. And I'd like to ask you, the reason, again, that you did not indict Donald Trump is because of OLC opinion stating that you cannot indict a sitting president, correct?
That is correct.
Now, Mueller responded that that's correct, but it could come across two different ways. Some people could see it as Mueller stating that Trump specifically would have been indicted were it not for the OLC opinion. But others could see it as Mueller stating that Trump, like any other president, wasn't indicted because Mueller never had the option per the OLC opinion. And Mueller came back and clarified what he meant, and he obviously meant the latter in that his report never even considered indictment since the OLC opinion precluded him from doing so from the outset. But here's where Ainsley went off the rails. She says that ABC's report that Trump could still be charged after leaving office was not necessarily true, but it is absolutely true. Not only does Mueller himself confirm this during an exchange with Republican lawmaker Ken Buck.
Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
But the OLC opinion itself states in plain English that it's possible. It says, while the OLC opinion concludes that a sitting president may not be prosecuted, it recognizes that a criminal investigation during the president's term is permissible. The OLC opinion also recognizes that a president does not have immunity after he leaves office. That is from the actual OLC memo. So for Ainsley to suggest that it's not true that Trump could be prosecuted after he leaves office is not only lazy, but strikingly misguided. She goes on to suggest that CBS's claim that Trump was not cleared of any wrongdoing was incorrect. But again, she's wrong. CBS probably claimed that Trump wasn't cleared of wrongdoing because Trump wasn't cleared of wrongdoing. And this is a strange hill for Ainsley to die on because not only did Mueller's written report state outright that the report does not exonerate the president, but Mueller reiterated this point himself within minutes of the hearing beginning.
So the report did not conclude that he did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what about total exoneration? Did you actually totally exonerate the president?
No.
Now, in fact, your report expressly states that it does not exonerate the president.
It does.
And your investigation actually found, quote, multiple acts by the president that were capable of exerting undue influence over law enforcement investigations, including the Russian interference and obstruction investigations. Is that correct?
Correct.
And look, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and guess that the reason Trump was not cleared of any wrongdoing had something to do with 10 instances of obstruction of justice. With Trump pressuring Comey to end his investigation into Mike Flynn, with trying to get then Attorney General Jeff Sessions to unrecuse himself, with firing FBI Director James Comey before telling the Russians that the pressure is now taken off, with trying on multiple occasions to have Mueller removed after the special counsel probe was started, with trying to get Sessions to limit the scope of Mueller's probe, with editing Don Jr.'s statements about the Trump Tower meeting, with Trump's demand that White House counsel Don McGahn lie about Trump trying to get him to fire Mueller, which McGahn refused to do, with dangling pardons for Flynn and Manafort, and with trying to intimidate Michael Cohen when he cooperated with prosecutors. But again, that's all just a wild guess. So I truly don't know if Ainsley Earhardt doesn't know these things laid out clearly in the Mueller report, or if she's towing the party line to lie to her viewers in defense of Trump. But either way,
they have a message they're trying to get out that's not factually correct.